Welcome to Life Change Transformation. This is episode number 18 in season two. I'm here with Maeve Langford. As always, from Cork, Ireland. She is a transformational life coach. She's blazing that trail of transformation, changing people's lives along the way, which is fantastic. It's always great to be here. She's a wealth of information and knowledge, and I just love having her insights and input. And doing this together has been a fantastic journey. And so it's been great to do that with her and be here every couple of weeks with you guys as well. As of course, my name is Gary Benoit. I'm normally based out of Edmonton, Alberta, in Canada, but today I'm in Utah, in the United States. We're doing some traveling and doing some business ventures and work and that kind of stuff, and we're just kind of taking in some sites. And so I'm joining you from United States of America in Utah, in St. George to be specific. So it's pretty cool spot. Red rocks and cool energy. So it's neat.
Sounds amazing.
Um, we're going to talk to you today about something that I've coined the "That's for me" code. Um, it's a little bit interesting of an idea. It's something that I've been using in my life um, over the last probably 5 years or so. I've really leaned into this idea of how do I become more open to growth and transformation? How do I expand my ability to be aware? And that's the words "that's for me" are something I say quite frequently. And the reason why I use the words "that's for me" is because sometimes as human beings we get caught in places of comparison, and we have that comparison despair. Sometimes it's jealousy, sometimes it's envy, sometimes we have these emotions around these things that, well, they have that, well, why don't I have that? Or they're doing better than I am because we live in our neighborhoods and we compare ourselves against our neighbors. And
Yeah.
instead of going to that place, I like to use the words, well, if I see something that someone else is doing, I use the words "that's for me." You know what I'm saying?
Yeah. So like kind of claiming it for
Yeah,
yourself.
for yourself. Yeah. And I think
Yeah.
that it's really neat way to live your life. And the reason why I'm bringing it up is because it's going to be my second book. I'm going to publish a book that's going to be called the "That's for Me" Code. It's about a third or maybe a little over a third done. I have a few more things I got to do to get it really buttoned up nicely, but it's coming. And the idea is that I want people to consider what it would be like instead of compare themselves against their neighbors, to be like, if I would really love that trailer, I would really love that vacation, to go to that place because it's the energetics of it, right? We're looking at energetics, transformation,
Exactly.
right? So transformation is energetics. So if you were to speak to energetics of transformation, what would be your thoughts on that, Maeve?
Well, I mean, I think you can make it really easy, right? And for any of you listening today, and if you're like, what are the energetics of transformation? It's not a big deal. I would say it's the energy is either going into expansion or it's going into contraction, right? And when you're describing that, you see somebody else and they have something that you would love to have, and especially if you feel you can't have it, typically we go into contraction, right? It's not fair, poor me, how come them, what am I doing wrong? And that's all taking us in a downward spiral. So, and the reason energetics of transformation is so significant is that in a world where everything is energy and that energy attracts like energy, then if we go down that contractive route, then there's nothing there's nothing that we can have except stuff that corresponds to or resonates with contraction. And if you can kind of go, that's for me, and I'm calling that in, and I would love that, and I'm claiming it, that, I mean, even, even using those words feels more expansive,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Mm-hmm.
And again, if I raise that vibration and the energy is going up, then again, the same like attracts like law of the universe is going to work. And it can only work this way. You're going to attract in things that are like that higher frequency.
Mm-hmm.
So, I mean, it's like you say with gratitude, Gary, as well. Like as a go-to energy, it's a high frequency energy. So I can be grateful for all that is in my life at the moment, and grateful that I'm calling in that thing that I would love as well.
Mm-hmm. I
And
love that.
that's the energy of the how we can work with the energy to support
Right.
transformation in a direction that we want it to go.
Correct. And you said something really specific there that I want to just point out is that you talked about the law of transformation. And the word law is an interesting word. And I think it's really important to just highlight the word law. That means it's a definite. Like this is the way it is, right? There's no
It's
other way.
immutable.
Right, exactly. And
Yeah,
so I think that understanding that we are working with the laws of transformation. And the law of attraction, the law of the idea that if you change energetics and you are a vibrational match to the vision that you want, then it can't not be yours. It's going to have to be yours. There's no other way around it. It will be yours.
exactly.
And I believe that this code that I'm trying to put out into the world and get people to sort of like consider and think about does that for people. So for example, um, in my life, I've looked at a few things. I've seen a few people I want to emulate. So there's people that I admire, people that I look up to, that I see, that I take sort of information from. And one is our coach. I really admire our coach, and I admire who she is and how she lives her life and what she does. And I really appreciate who she is in that way. Another guy is a person named Ed Milet. You may not know Ed Milet. If you do, you'll know who I'm talking about. He's a podcaster in the U.S. here. He's a speaker. He's an author. He's in our part of our financial company, and so he's got all this stuff on the go, and he's got something called he's got a TV show. Like he's got lots on the go, and when I see that, um, I would I would love to have all of the things that he's had on the go. That's part of my vision is to have
Okay,
like when I look at
that's
my
your
vision,
vision.
like and so if I
Yeah.
was to like really, I don't want to model myself after him because I can't be Ed. Ed's going to be Ed. I got to be me, right? I still have to be me. But everything that he's doing, I'm like, that's for me. And initially, when I first saw that, I'm like, oh man, I would love. I can't have that. I don't have that. My thoughts were different. I had this like, I sunk back in my chair and I was like, oh man, that would. I'm not even close to that.
Yeah.
And then when I heard the words "that's for me," and I felt the energetics around what that meant, and I got really considering and researching it for myself and understanding what those words mean for me. That's for me. I'm like, man, I that is for me. That's what I would love. That's my vision is a lot of what he's got on the go there is I don't want a TV show necessarily, but I mean everything else he's got, the worldwide podcast, the speaking engagements, the financial teams, all that stuff, that's for me.
Yeah.
And and so when I started to use that's for me, it changed my perspective on everything he had on the go. And when I was listening to him, it was a different energy. I got different feedback from that.
Yeah.
Right? Right. The feedback I was receiving was so much different than in the other energy. And that
Yeah.
was something I really took note of. And the idea that you can use those three little words in that moment to
Yeah.
just change the energy, I think is such an important and really specific way to really expand your life.
Yeah.
And
And
go ahead.
well, I was just gonna say, I just think like I didn't know this man Ed
Yeah.
before today, but I just love that like you're some of the things that you're pointing to that when you first said, oh, I'd love that, he'd big financial teams and speaking engagements and a podcast and the TV show, which you're saying you don't really want at the moment anyway. But like Gary, here you are, right? And
Right.
you've got speaking engagements,
Right.
and we're doing a podcast, and of course it's going to
Right.
grow and get bigger and be more
Yes.
international. And just even by deciding that's for me and declaring it for yourself, and then just taking the steps you can take. I mean, I'm sure you're way closer to being, like he is now than you were when you first had that thought. That's
100%.
for me.
100%. And like
Yeah.
it's interesting because before we were right in the very, very infancy of this whole idea for us doing this podcast, okay, it was about probably 6 months before we had this conversation about the podcast in the very beginning. Did I
Hmm.
change that idea? Like that was about like so it was about 6 months prior. So that's how fast all of a sudden this idea came. Now you know we collaborating on that, and now we developed this amazing life change transformation podcast, which I believe is amazing. And we are worldwide, we are international. It's kind of by us being in two different places already. It was international when we started because you were
True.
in Ireland and I was here. But it was such an interesting flip because before that I wouldn't have had an idea, not even a clue. But I changed the energy around it, and this is what's a result of it, right? Which is such a when I look back on it from the hindsight, of course, hindsight's always 2020, right? I can't connect the dots
Yeah.
going forward, as always. You got to connect them going backwards.
Yeah.
But yeah, you're right. It's like you make that decision, and those words have resonated so well with me, and I've continued to use it. So the evidence is still showing up in my world,
Yeah.
right?
It's kind of interesting when we first started to talk about, preparing for this topic and this particular podcast. Part of me was kind of like, I'm not sure I have a whole lot of examples of how I've used that. But as we've been, planning it, more and more
Hmm.
fall in for me. So just I would say like with the card deck, and it's here on my desk, that's why I'm looking at it. But when there's an Irish author, her name is Abby Wynne. And for me, it's kind of like when I see Irish people having the kind of success that I would love, that really resonates. Because again, there's an element, well, they're Irish, I'm Irish. It could work for me,
Hmm.
right?
Hmm.
And she had a book, this has gone back quite a number of years. She's published several more books since. But I loved this particular book of hers. And then like a year later she and I was kind of like, that's for me. And then a year or two later she brought out a second book and I was like, man, you got to be kidding me. Like I was just about, getting my head around I could have one book, and then she brought out another book, and then she brought out several books. So I was kind of like just noticing that with the energy, right? And the thing that I want to just kind of add into this as a kind of tweak is that when we say that's for me, it's not that we have to do it the other person's way,
Right.
right? It's just they're having success in it, they're publishing a book. And I think me kind of calling in a bit of that's for me allowed me or created more space in me to do the card deck, right? I
Absolutely.
did I might do a book sometime. I kind of think there might be a book in me,
Hmm.
but I wasn't ready for it, and the card deck was the route I chose to go. So really kind of for everybody listening today, just saying you can call in that energy, like that success, that impact, that way of engaging people is for me. And then you find your own version of it.
Absolutely. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah,
And I think that's real. That's why I said I have to be me. I can't ever emulate. I can't be Ed, right? Ed Milet. I can't be him. Um,
exactly.
and that's the first distinction is that it's going to come your way. Like my way is my way and not your way, right? Like,
Yeah,
does that make sense? I can't,
yeah,
like, and I knew, and I had enough awareness that I knew that the things that I really loved about him and who he was on stage and how he performs his speeches and how he shows up in that way. I know that I can't do him. I can't be him in the way he does it. He's got a
yeah.
very certain
He's
intensity.
taken.
Yeah, he's right. But I do know that I have another way that's my way, but I can still do
Yeah,
similar things in that realm, right?
exactly.
And it's
Exactly.
for you, I think it's so great. You call that's for me, and then what happens? You have this great idea of a great card deck. With the card deck is fabulous, by the way, and
Yeah.
I think it's amazing. As soon as it gets on the website, I'm going to order one, right? So I can order it. I can order it in whatever, however it is. I'll order it,
And one of these days, yes,
whatever it
I
looks like.
promise.
And so ultimately, like, I just think it's so great that when you say those words and you utilize that moment, it's like, oh, and then something will drop in and say, well, yeah, you can do this is what it is for you. This is what it means for you, right? Instead of being in that comparison, despair,
Yeah.
right? From, you know, in that way. So like ultimately, I think as human beings too, we tend to, um, I think we compare quite a bit. I think,
Yeah,
I
I
think we
know it's crazy how much we do
I
that.
think we really do compare quite a bit. Like we look at someone's relationship. Like I know lots of people that are in our world and they unfortunately they have had different results in their relationships when it comes to their spousal relationship, their marriage. Some have been in divorce and that kind of stuff, and that's very tragic and things have happened and I feel for them. But they've often said to Colette and I, or like, my wife and I, they say, well, And I would love to, I want you have, I want that relationship. And so they compare where they're at and against what we have. And I think if they were to just, in that way too, like you see those things and you hear those words and I am flattered that they would try to emulate what we have. I think but that doesn't mean we haven't come through our own trials and tribulations. We haven't done this perfectly, right? We're a couple.
Yeah, and you guys work at it,
We work
right?
at it, but I mean, it is what it is. But the thing is that if they would just say, "Hey, that's for me," instead of like in that comparison of, "Oh man, I'm never going to have that," because that's like the
Mm,
comment. Well, I'm never going to have that. So, well, why can't you? Why couldn't you have that,
yeah,
right? And then if they were to use the words "that's for me," I think they would then expand the opportunities available to them in that way because their relationship won't be
for
exactly
sure.
like ours. I know that it won't be the same, but it'll be whatever they believe it to be, right? And,
Yeah,
and I think it works in all aspects of your life. I think it's in your fitness. I think if you have a physical fitness goal, if someone that you look
absolutely.
right, you compare yourself against whoever it might be, and you go, oh man. And instead of going, I don't know if I'll ever get there. That looks really hard, or nah. Look at me. I'm not gonna. I'm 50 pounds
Yeah,
overweight. Right? It doesn't work that way. But if you use the words, well, that's what I would love. I would love to be like that. And maybe it would open the door to something new, right? A new idea,
yeah.
maybe, right? Or just to lighten the feel of it, give you that almost like you feel a little bit lighter in that moment. And so you have a different outlook on those things,
Definitely.
right?
Definitely. And I mean, the other two areas in my life that I can think of, and well, they're kind of both in the well-being space, but one was like having this desire or longing to climb Tool, which is
Which is
Ireland's
fantastic.
highest mountain. But I used to see when we first came back to Ireland, I met my husband in the UK and we'd lived there for quite a long time together. And then we came back to Ireland and to this house, our home now, and we'd see the people out walking and preparing for the annual Tool hike. They used to go as a kind of community
Oh,
from the village and raise funds for the local pitch and school and
oh, how about
whatever
that?
needed. Yeah, it was
Cool. That's
amazing.
really cool.
Yeah, and we had young kids at the time, and I'd be looking at them and I'd be saying, I'd love that. I'd love that. And I mean, it took me 20 years to kind of say, if I'd known your phrase much earlier and just said, that's for me, I'm sure I'd have called it in way
Right.
quicker. And the other area was it was my brother who swims regularly and has done for years. And he used to do this 2K cycle, 2 kilometer or swim around a little island off one of the little beaches that we go to locally. And I used to be watching him, and that was a kind of, I want to be able to do that someday. And I didn't have the same code or phrase
Hmm.
as you use, that's for me, but it was kind of like, I'd love that. So I think as we're talking about it, this is kind of how our longings show up, right? Isn't it that we see somebody or something and they're not always known to us. It could be, somebody in the news or on TV or whatever. And again, not necessarily celebrities, but you hear about somebody doing or achieving or having something. And you think, I'd love that. And what we're kind of saying here is that like to be an energetic match for it rather than thinking, but I can't have it. We think
Right.
that's for me. I'll have a little bit of that, please.
Right. I
Yeah.
think that the words like, oh, I think I'd love to do that, or I thought that'd be really cool. I hear that quite a bit. Those comments. I mean, that's the kind of the language that gets used around our
Yeah.
group is like, yeah, that's really cool. I think that'd be kind of cool to do that. Those words aren't like they're more of a like I think they're more of a contractive energy a little bit because it's like, yeah, you're putting it out there, right? So yeah, that'd be kind of cool. And even if they really would really love to do it, it's
Yeah.
it's putting it almost out of reach, right? Yeah, that'd be kind of cool to do that. That'd be,
Sure.
or I would really love to do that. But by then, if you were to just say, "That's really cool," that's for me. Now you're embodying that.
Calling it
You're
in.
you're right.
Yeah.
You're stepping into that. Yeah, that's really for me. That would be. Yeah, that's for me. I want that. And
Yeah.
you're almost claiming it to be yours,
Yeah, I would agree. That's the energy of it to me
right?
that it's like, yeah, I'm in for
I'm
that.
claiming this now to be mine. And now I think when you talk about transformation and we talk about the energetics of that, when we come in, that's what we're teaching and we're trying to give people the idea, the toolbox to do the transformation. You can compress your timelines by just stating that's for me and that you're going to claim it as being yours.
Yeah.
Because what'll happen then, I believe, is that you'll start to get ideas coming in that you would never have had before because now you're attached to a whole different frequency.
Yeah.
and those ideas will come. And the important thing about that, you guys, is not to dismiss the ideas.
Yeah.
I think that
Yeah.
I think that's the hardest work to do because that's probably why I stumbled in the very beginning, is because some of the ideas would come to me and I'd be so quick to go, "Oh, where'd that come from?" And I'd be almost like, "Whoa," like almost like that, swatted away in a way. Oh my God, where did that come from?
Yeah.
Um, because we're just too quick to judge our own ideas,
Yeah. Yeah.
right? So,
So I would say with that, right, is if you can just slow it down a little bit and the idea you're noticing what you're noticing, you're catching those ideas as they come in. And sometimes there's a lot of them, right? And it can feel a bit like, where do I even start or which idea do I run with? And the suggestion I always give is like if it makes you smile, it's for you,
mhm,
right? If it and often we don't notice the idea until we've realized we're smiling about
right.
something, and it's like, okay, then there's energy in this one. There's
Mhm.
energy in this one, and just make a start.
I agree. And the other thing too is it works the other way too. If you see someone having something, doing something, you can still be happy for them, but it doesn't always have to be for you.
Yeah,
And so that's the other thing too, you guys, is that I've noticed is that I've used this "that's for me" code and I've really applied it into my life every time I turn around and I see something. But there are people that are doing things that I think are really, really neat. And I'm really happy for them, like truly happy for them. Like I don't compare, I don't I've really come away from that. But I go, yeah, that's really, really cool, but that's not for me.
yeah,
That's not that's amazing. I think it's so neat, and it also takes away that it takes the edge off the any idea of jealousy or envy, or sometimes we have those moments of those feelings, right? Those kind of
yeah,
like internal feelings of those two things. Well, oh, why is he doing that? And why does he have those? And kind of have those grumblings in our mind, right? We have those grumblings. And
yeah,
but when I realized that what I was grumbling about lots of times was, well, I don't even want that.
yeah,
Why
yeah,
am I grumbling about that? I don't want that.
yeah,
Right? So
yeah,
that's not for me. But I'm really happy for him
yeah,
because that's or her, that's for them. And so that's for me. And also then no, if you turn around, that's for them. And
yeah,
you can actually be super happy and thrilled for somebody else in a way that's really,
yeah,
really, really, really healthy. That's
yeah,
you can really use it to your advantage to continue to create that energetic of attraction
yeah.
because you don't get stumbled.
Yeah, and I think that clarity to be able to say, this but not that is both helpful in terms of the signal you're sending out to the universe, and also in terms of like we need to focus, right?
Yeah.
So, and I always think of Steve Jobs in this moment, and obviously didn't know the man himself, but he's famous for saying that he was as proud of all the things they said no to as he is about the things they created in Apple when he was there. And I just think there's something really important in that for all of us. And again, whether it's in our health or our relationships or our career or our time and money freedom, for us to have the thing we want, it's as much about saying yes to that thing as it is about saying no to all the other things that are potentially going to distract us and pull us away from it. So I think what you're saying, yeah, that's for them and not for me. And I can celebrate them and be glad for them, but I don't have to take it on because it's not resonating with
Mhm.
me.
Mhm.
And I think that clarity, Gary, for you and for all of us really stands to us in terms of keeping that focus on the thing
Mhm.
that really is the one that you want to claim for
Right.
yourself.
And I think too, it creates an energy of happiness too. You talk about being happy, the smiling, the idea that when you're doing something or when you're undertaking a project or an idea or you're leaning into a relationship or a new career or whatever that might be for you, and it makes you feel happy, and you're able to do that in a way that is easy for you.
Yeah,
It feels with ease, right? You can be happy for others way easier.
yeah, that's true. That
Right?
is true.
Because you're sitting in a place where you're like super happy and like I mean I'm very I'm very focused on a few things and being focused and intentional and intense and there's a word I'm just trying to. I'll find it for you. It's coming. It's on top of my head. Having that fire, that intensity, that fire to do something, or
Hmm.
that doesn't mean you can't be happy all the time and have that happiness for others as well as for yourself wherever you're at. So I think it's really cool to have that. I think that's what those two or those three words really do is it creates this platform
Yeah.
of happiness in, happiness out, and that ability to, to be um, open, of course, to all of what's there. And I think you can apply it to pretty well anything in your life. Like if you have, even if it comes towards like I have a great son. He's an amazing kid, and I'm so grateful that um, he is the way he is, and wasn't a typical teenager in a way. Like he was a very like homebody, and he's very like focused on his career, even from a young age. He really has this idea
Hmm.
and this like this creative energy. But I think the really neat thing about it was that I was able to use that in our relationship really well, right? Because I want to see him have the success. I want to see him have as every parent does. Every parent wants their child to be.
Sure.
I think look at your kids. You want your kids to have all the success they can have and more, right? And
Hmm.
if you could give it to them, you would, but they have to get it themselves.
Hmm.
Right. But I think the idea that I can use the words that's for me is like, yeah, that's the relationship I want with him. I want this relationship with him. And I want to have, I want him to look to me, just even if it's like a sounding board or just the ability to have that golf game together without
Hmm.
any conflict. Just little things like that that you can use to improve
Yeah.
your own personal relationship with your kids, with your family. Um, and so yeah, so I just think it's really kind of a cool thing when you get that opportunity to apply this to the learnings of
Yeah.
transformation itself. I think you can, use it to do that pretty easily.
Yeah. And I think I was just gonna say, like, the way we talk sometimes about, okay, that's for me. It can be the same with our vision. We create a vision, and there's a part of us feels like, yes, I'd love it, but I'm not sure I can really have it. So, I mean, while people listening today, you might kind of feel, okay, I'm willing to call in some stuff and claim it and to say that's for me. But if you're feeling there's a bit of a gap in the believing space there. The other phrase I would encourage for all of us is just to say to yourself, like, what's possible for anyone is possible for
Yeah.
me, because they've just proven it can be done. And if anybody can do it, then everybody can do it. And again, we don't have to do it their way, but it just means that it's possible, right? So if it's possible, I can do it. Um, I was reading actually some work of Esther and Jerry Hicks, the Abraham Hicks duo, but they were talking about law of attraction and all of this and vibration and everything else. But I meet a lot of people in my work area and they kind of say to me, maybe yeah, I love the vision and I love to be able to say that's for me, but I have to be realistic.
Mm,
So I found a great quote from Esther Hicks that she said, if you can imagine it, it's realistic. And I just thought, because it like you've already created it in the mind. It's
right.
realistic. It's possible if you've imagined it. And I just thought that's really helpful to remember for all of us that, what we think is realism is really just kind of, what we've been taught to pay attention to and
Yeah.
focusing on the five senses. So, sight, sound, touch, taste. Um, I always forget one of them. But anyway, the five senses people will know.
Hmm.
Um, and we've been taught about, the tangible, that that's what's realistic. But in the world of transformation, that like there's way more going on. What's realistic is probably what we think of as what's logical. In our work area, we talk about sometimes we have like six mental faculties, not just logic, but we
Hmm.
have memory and imagination and perception and will. Um, and all of that is part of how we can create results that we would love. So if I
Absolutely.
claim that's for me, there's lots of ways that I can work with making that tangible and
Right.
real. It doesn't start being tangible and real necessarily, but I can manifest it to
Right.
be tangible and real.
I think I just want to just add to that one little line that I think it was Henry David Thoreau said, first thought, then inform,
Yeah.
right? So
Yeah.
everything had to be first in your mind.
Yeah.
So if you can think about it, then you can bring it to form. And so,
Yeah.
so I think that yes, we have a tendency to, in this type of work, when we first get introduced to it, to have this idea of realistic. Have to be realistic, and I'm going to air quote the word realistic. And the reason why I do that is because being realistic is just a paradigm keeping you comfortable,
Yeah.
right? And so I think that recognizing that as your paradigm now will change the ability to
Yeah.
repattern that to what's possible. And as we
Yeah.
come to the end here, as we wrap up this show, which went really fast, um, I think the idea that your vision and what you would love in your life is very possible. I think one, I want to just hammer that home. I think that whatever you would love for yourself is something you can actually absolutely have in your life. I
Yeah.
believe it possible. I believe if you can think about it, I think you can bring it upon in your life. I think you can show it up in your life. You can manifest it in your life. You can do the things, take the steps that will get you there. And I think if you can just use this code, if you can just use that's for me as a way to embody it, as a way to really own it, step into it,
Mhm.
have that ownership of it, I think ultimately you will compress your timelines and you will have the idea of a quantum leap and you'll be able to take that big jump to the next
Yeah.
level, right? As you grow. That's my thought.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah. And I would encourage people to, rather than, not wanting to look around and see what's out there and what's possible. I would encourage everybody listening today to just kind of, I don't know, the next weekend coming up, as you're going around and you're seeing cars, or you're seeing, I don't know, clothing or whatever it is, a new coffee mug, whatever it is. And if there's a kind of, I'd love that feeling around it, rather than, oh, I can't have it, I can't afford it, it's this, it's that. Just to be able to say, if I'd really love it, then that's for me. And you don't have to
Yeah.
get it straight away or anything else, but it's just like, yeah, I'm seeing something, I'm resonating with it, and I'm calling it in, and
Mm-hmm.
and it'll come.
And
It'll
just
come.
see what happens, see what ideas come to you, because that step will be available to you
Yeah.
by doing that. So,
Yeah. Yeah, so definitely, I mean, and this is probably a topic for another day, as we call it in and as we're aligning with it, then it is definitely, am I showing up like that person? I mean, you could have had the idea for a podcast, but if you weren't willing to engage and talk about it and actually, get on a call eventually, the two of us, to make it work,
right,
then it's not going to happen, right? We do
right.
have to be in action, but it starts with kind of saying, yeah, I'd love that.
Mm-hmm.
I'd love that.
Mm-hmm. So, yeah.
And that's for me.
And that's for me. So that's fantastic. Thank you guys. Maeve, as always, it's been a pleasure this week. Great insights. Love the information. Anything that this is coming out near the end of May, so anything that's new in June or July for you that needs to
I
be.
will have a spiritual retreat we'll have completed our vision workshop, but I have
Yep.
a spiritual retreat in the middle of June. So
Okay.
there'll be links. I can put the links in the
Okay.
details. It is
Awesome.
here in Ireland. So probably available to those closer to the doorstep, or of course willing to travel. So if you're
Okay.
listening and you're thinking that's for me,
Mm-hmm.
reach out now and
Mm-hmm.
we can give you all the details.
That's
Okay.
fantastic. As well as you have a card deck. Hopefully that's going to be available to purchase on a website
Yes.
or something like that. I'd love to see that. That'd be amazing.
Yes. You'll
And
definitely be getting a gift of one of them,
oh, I
Gary.
can I can buy it. I
Yes.
can. And so it's as always, like I say, this next book, That's For Me code, that the That's For Me code is coming out. I'm not sure exactly when I'll
Brilliant.
have it published, but I'll let you keep you guys updated when it's all finished. I have a few more things to button up on it, but and
It's all happening.
a call for service. It's out there. It's on Amazon. If you want to read a little more about me and understand me a little bit better, it takes you through my journey of policing and how I got to where I am today, sitting in front of you in a podcast with a lady from Ireland. So it's fantastic. It's fantastic. So thank you guys very
Brilliant.
much. Have a great couple of weeks, and we'll see you in 2 weeks.
See you in 2 weeks.